Hello and welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast, where we explore what it is to be a healthy spiritual man today. I'm Eamon. It's great to have you with us. Welcome to the New Thought Men's Podcast. I'm Eamon. Today we're here with Dr. Reverend Bill Marchiony, and it's such an honor to have you with us today, Bill. I just want to introduce you, share a little bit about you real quick, and then we'll get into our topic of abundance. So, sure. Bill serves those who call themselves spiritual but not religious. Love that. He is the co-founder and spiritual director of New Thought Philadelphia, newthoughtphilly.org. You can find them there. He is the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results, available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. Bill is the host of the Practical Prayer podcast, and he also serves on the executive board of the International New Thought Alliance and is the administrator of ANTN, the Affiliated New Thought Network. So, Bill, you just apparently aren't busy at all.
I got plenty of free time. Wonder what I'm going to do this afternoon after we're done with the interview.
Well, great to have you here today, and just wanted to, you just did a sharing with us, a talk with us about prosperity and abundance. And I loved what you said about this is a prosperity teaching, and it is. How I think my question would be, or a question would be to start us off, is if you're new to New Thought, if you're new to this philosophy, where would someone, where do you start in this abundance kind of consciousness? How do you start to build more of an abundance consciousness? And then maybe part two, for those of us who have been in it for a while, practitioners and ministers and people who have been in this philosophy for a while, how do we expand that? How do we grow that? So let's start there. What do you think?
Okay. Well, and the answer is the same, but the experience and application is a little bit different. And what I do always is take it back to the fundamentals of the teaching, which is also the fundamentals when we get into a practical prayer or a spiritual mind treatment, or however you're going to be phrasing that. There's one power, one source, one presence, one love, one energy, one everything. And that one is diversifying itself, sharing itself, expressing itself, unfolding and evolving itself as all of its creation. So everything that we can observe or experience or understand in the universe is that one taking its own particular form, and we're part of it. It's not like that divine presence is everywhere in the universe except the 3 feet around me. So it is not possible. There's not two. It can't be two. There's either one or an infinite variety. And if it's an infinite variety, then it's an infinite variety of the same one. So it comes back to itself. So with that fundamental idea in mind, for somebody who's new to New Thought and is told we live in an infinitely abundant universe and all of the good that's available anywhere is available everywhere and it's available to you right now. The question is, well, then how do I get the goods? How do I get some of that stuff that I'm looking for? How do I get the great job or the loving relationship or the house on the mountain? And the answer is you can use this technique, this process to get it, but don't start there. Start small. The first thing to do is to learn the technique, to learn the process. And you mentioned in my book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, which was completely, I was going to say ripped off. It's actually inspired by Ernest Holmes and spiritual mind treatment. It's the same thing. It is the same process. It is a 5-step prayer with an extra 2 steps that get thrown in when we bump up against our belief system. And at the core, it's affirmations. It's the same practice that the self-help people talk about as manifesting. And the first step is do it. try it. If you think about it, if you ponder how it could possibly work, if you have discussions with all sorts of other people about whether or not this is a valid premise or how it could possibly, and get into the basically stuck in your head, then that's where it stays. So the technique that I suggest in the book and all the other times is start with something really small. Have an affirmation to see green Volkswagens. Or when I started, one of the things that we did was we were driving across town, green lights, to get an abundance of green lights, because we all believe that there's going to be half of them are going to green, half of them are going to be red, and some are going to be yellow, turn into the last possible second. I got involved in this and was living in Tampa, Florida, and driving across town in Tampa. It was just, you go a couple of green lights, you get a red, and that's always the way it worked. And after we learned to do this, and we did this really simple prayer for green lights, we drove across town 17 green lights in a row. That was awesome.
Nice.
That was awesome. Didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. They did another prayer for perfect parking spaces. Now, I have a car and I got to drive and I got to park, so I can do a prayer for there to be a perfect parking space. And I don't have a lot of energy about there not being a perfect parking space. But it got to the point where when I would drive up to a place where I was going, somebody would be pulling out from the space right in front of it. And there's nobody else there, and I would pull right in. So the idea behind doing those sorts of prayers for something inconsequential that doesn't matter so much is to prove to ourselves that it works. Because if it works on that, then our belief system still can work on something else. It can work on something bigger. It can work to help me get a perfect job. It can work to help me with a relationship. It can work to get me enough money to pay the rent. And it does. But if we start with those, then what we're working against is our disbelief. If we believe that it's not going to work, then it shows up by looking like it's not working. That's still it working.
Yeah.
It's still working to give us what we're expecting or believing. So the first step is to pick something or a series of somethings that are completely inconsequential so that you can practice the technique and give it a try. So go ahead.
Yeah, that was, for sure. Like, that's kind of where I started. I mean, I've been in this movement for over 30 years and love it. And it was, affirmations, it was, vision boards, it was things like that. And, just after a while, you're starting to know, wow, like at the end of the year, like 95% of the things on my vision board came true. And I looked at it like, once a month or something like that. And it's just amazing how that builds on itself. And like even last year, like I just about doubled my income last year because I really delved in deep about those deeper beliefs about deservability, about abundance, about am I good enough, and removing some of those blocks to my own I guess, self-sabotage on a certain level. It's just not having the belief that I didn't deserve, or I wasn't worthy of that, or I wasn't good enough. And to simply shift those inner beliefs and then almost double my income that year I'm sure you can experience the same things. It still happens. Like, as we deepen in this philosophy, it gets even bigger and better to a certain extent of, what shows up in our life, and not to mention all the other abundance of connection and friendship, of serendipity, just showing up and being there for someone, or vice versa. It is truly an incredible philosophy. And I loved what Ernest Holmes said about it, is don't believe me. Try it for yourself and see if it works. And I loved your advice. Just start with those inconsequential things. Start with those things that you don't really get. Okay, I get a good parking spot, or I have to walk, no big deal. But then when it starts showing up, when the green lights start showing up, it's like, oh, wow, okay, let's try something bigger. You get a little bolder. You want to experience something, and you really want to kind of put it to the test. And then you're like, okay, instead of going, okay, well, that didn't manifest, I'm done. you're like, huh, why didn't that manifest? Like, is there something within me that's restricting that? Or is there something within me that's counter belief to what I'm trying to achieve? So yeah, so such amazing experiences and results of the life that I never would have guessed I had, just because of simply, you know, expressing what I truly want and then trying to get out of the way as best as I can.
Yep. And getting out of the way is huge. So in the realm of simplifying, at my spiritual community, every Sunday morning, we say what we believe. And this is not the 11 principles that other people use, or the 5 hosannas, or the 6 that they're using different. We got one. We believe there's one power, love, intelligence, or force that creates everything, including each of us, and that we're each using that same power, love, intelligence, or force to create our lives according to our beliefs. That's it.
Yeah.
According to our beliefs. And there's a lot of nuance in it. There's a lot that's packed into that. You know, there's truth in it, but according to our beliefs. So then the question is, well, how do I know what I believe? You know, how do I know what's hidden, lurking in my belief system? Because it's not just what I think I believe or what I want to believe. It's what I actually believe.
Yeah.
And it might be something that I studied and learned and adopted. And it could be something that I picked up from my family of origin. It could be something cultural that's just been so baked into society for forever that I just assume that it must be true. The good news is there's a really simple way of understanding what's in your belief system, because your life is a topographical map of your belief system. You want to see what you believe? Look at your life. You want to be prosperous and have a loving, wonderful relationship, and you find yourself struggling at the first of the month because the rent is due and there's nobody seems to want to go out on Saturday night. Well, that's something that's worth looking at. What's going on with that? And how do I change those beliefs? I may get to find out where they came from or what they are. That's what psychotherapy is about. And it's can be helpful, but it's not necessary. So the second part of your question, Eamon, was how does somebody who's been involved in the teaching for a while grow their prosperity consciousness? And what we want to do is circle back around to the same fundamental principles that we've been talking about. There is one infinite creative power that shares itself as all of its creation. It is everything, everyone, everywhere. And that means that it's available to me. And if I am a seasoned and experienced practitioner, if I've been creating new experiences in my life for a long time, and then suddenly it seems like it's not working again, what do I do about that? And there are a couple of different approaches that we can have. One is to go through our heart and dig into changing our beliefs. And the other is to convince ourselves in our head that this is an aberration. This is something that's definitely a local experience. And the way that I like to do that with the head is, this is an infinite creative power. Okay, this has created every element, every atom, every molecule, every person, every particle, every planet, every person, every planet, every galaxy, every star. This is an infinitely abundant universe. There is absolutely no possibility that that infinite creative power is sitting there going, wow, I wish there were enough star stuff to create one more planet. Not going to happen. It's infinite, okay? And there's not just a galaxy that's out there, even though it's pretty big. In our galaxy, there are billions of stars, but there's billions of galaxies. Yeah. There is so much abundance in this universe that the thought that that infinite creative power couldn't bring whatever goodness I'm looking for into my life is preposterous. It has nothing to do with the creative power. It is available and poised and ready to work, and it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love that.
Yeah. So, and by the way, if the biggest thing that we can possibly ever imagine happens on planet Earth, it does not change our solar system much. It doesn't change our galaxy hardly at all. And it doesn't change the universe in any particularly measurable way.
Yeah.
So everything that we're looking for is so far down within the margin of error that all of the good that we're imagining is certainly possible. Yeah. You know, and when we're talking about our experience of prosperity, our connection with that abundance, it is a wonderful reminder that our experience of prosperity is never about supply. It is always
Mm.
about distribution.
Mm.
There is plenty everywhere for everyone. And if we're not experiencing it, it's because there's some imbalance that's going on in our lives. So is it easy to blame the wealthy because they took all the money? Sure. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on in society that's really not helpful or healthy. There have been civilizations in the past where the people at the top took all the money and further impoverished the people who were down at the bottom. And eventually, they went and gathered up their their pointy things and went and took on the people who had all the goods. And so it's a temporary circumstance, but it doesn't make it any less real.
Yeah.
And there is the possibility for us to engage in the world in a way where Elon Musk can continue to have as much money as Elon Musk has, and so can Jeff Bezos, and so can Bill Gates, and so can yada, yada, yada. And I can still be living a happy and prosperous and fulfilled life.
Yeah.
It's not about them.
Yeah. Yeah. Then I think that and maybe it is like just it kind of makes me want to go into what about then the collective belief? What about our society or our world? How do we then expand this out into that and make it more readily available? And maybe it is like it shows up as you believe. And there are people who don't believe and that they are deserving or they have abundance or can see it or be grateful for it. But if we were to step into that larger context of society or the planet, how would my guess is it's probably the same. It is this creative cosmos and we're all a part of that creativity and we get to choose. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that is just a part of what the soul yearning is to experience this abundance or to experience lack or to have that piece of soul growth. But ultimately it comes down to choice. I think Ernest Holmes said, it's change your thinking, change your life. And that was really like kind of a fundamental shift, I think, for a lot of people coming into this philosophy who are like, oh yeah, I do have my free will. I do get to choose. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I'm answering the question, but I'll let you you take a go at it as well.
Yeah. And change your thinking, change your life is really powerful and profound and not easy to do. It is not easy to change our thinking. And our beliefs, which are behind our thinking, underneath our thinking that we're maybe not even aware of. Sometimes we're aware of our thoughts, sometimes we're not. A lot of times we're not aware of our beliefs. It's a process to dig in and understand what it is that I believe and what it is that I want to believe instead, and to be willing to accept the consequences. So a lot of time, and I ran a teen group for 12 years, and as soon as we got into the idea of creating our thinking, creating our lives according to our beliefs, the teenagers would say, well, you mean if I don't like what's going on in my life, it's my fault? And that, of course, immediately takes it to the negative and takes it to blame. So is it your fault? Well, that implies that whatever's happening in your life is not good. But what's happening in our lives is the result of our beliefs, and we can change it. So it's not about blame or credit. It's more about authority and accountability. I can change my beliefs, and that will change my life. And if I have a belief, then it's going to show up in my life. And if I change my belief and I get something in my life that I really don't like, I got to hold myself to account. I created that. Now, the good news is I can create something different instead. But that is, to my mind, possibly the most challenging thing about the New Thought teaching is in so many other religions, there is a priest or a shaman or an avatar or a prophet or a deity who's making decisions for us and deciding that you're worthy and you're not worthy. You get this, you don't get that. You asked for this, but you don't deserve it, so you don't get it. Mm-hmm. And the magical thing about that, and I'm not saying that it's good, but the magical thing about that is that we get off the hook. If I'm not getting what I want, what I'm praying for, and I can blame it on God because God doesn't want me to have it for whatever reason, and God knows why I don't, I shouldn't get this because I know in my heart that I deserve it.
Yeah.
What we have to give up in New Thought is blame. We can't blame God. We, as they used to say in the TV commercials for the discount retailers, we cut out the middleman. It's just us and the infinite.
Yeah. Just that creative flow that moves through us, and to be able to deepen in the assessment and understanding of where our consciousness, where our belief, where our unconscious beliefs are, to be able to then address those issues rather than beating ourselves up for it, is what I'm hearing you say. And that's imperative, because otherwise we get stuck in that victim loop and are like, oh, I'm not worthy, yeah.
Listen for
Fascinating.
people who show up and they always have a dramatic story to tell.
Yeah.
And, and they can be fascinating because they're captivating and they're larger than life, and they got this story that they're telling, and it's always about that thing that happened to them, or that adversity that they had to deal with, and it becomes all about the story and all about the drama. And I have two practitioners in my community, one who drives for a living, and the other is a very accomplished wound care nurse. And the one of them could show up and say, oh yeah, sorry I'm late, I had to fix a flat tire, with no energy. Now, people, they show up, they've had to change the tires. Oh my God, I was stuck on the side of the road and the cars were whizzing by at 60 miles an hour and I couldn't get the spare out, and it was this, and the jack didn't work, and I had to wait for AAA and it took an hour, and all the rest of it. And it's very dramatic. And I get it. I've been in that situation before. It is not something that's fun. It's not something that we look forward to, that we like doing. And the other one could just as easily show up and say, sorry, I'm late, I had to give somebody CPR. And I have no energy about it. Well, somebody else, for somebody to need CPR, that's like a life and death situation. And there's every reason in the world to get dramatic about that.
Yeah. And
it's not necessary. Because, that's a thing that happened, and that's something that we get to deal with. And if we leave the drama out of it and say, this is what I had, because she's got a gift, because she knows how to do CPR. And if she can be authentically herself and share that gift and bring more good into the world, it doesn't need to be a big dramatic story.
I want to take this and shift gears just a little bit and how this applies to men's work, because so much of what we do is counsel based, where we're listening, not just listening, but we're really actively listening. And for us in New Thought, it's like there's even this another level of like awareness of we're seeing that greater vision that's unfolding. We're holding the high vision for that person. And I think so much and so oftentimes we're wanting them to understand, we're wanting them to see our perspective, and oftentimes it can be dramatic, especially if it's intense, to be able to let go of some of the drama and really have the story heard, so that we don't need to tell it 10 more times to find somebody who's actually willing to listen, and not just kind of like, oh yeah, that sucks, I've done that before, or that's happened to me, whatever, but really listen and be heard. Then there's something, I feel, 30 years of men's work, I feel there's something in that just is naturally healing about being heard and being able to let go of the drama, being able to let go of the story, ultimately, to be able to step into that new paradigm of, I see you in your joy, I see you in your abundance, I see you in your wholeness, I see you in your beauty, as opposed to, oh my God, that's so horrible. I can't believe that you had to do that, and that happened to you. And, the pity part of it that oftentimes society does play into.
There's a lot of power in a talking stick. Of getting the people who are in a group to just be able to take turns and say, this is what's going on for me. And in some of the men's communities that I've been involved in, there's a follow-up question. Somebody's going to share, and the follow-up question is, are you open to input? And sometimes, I'd love to hear what the group has to say. And sometimes I just needed to get this off my chest. And they're both okay answers. And a lot of times when the group is giving input, it's not advice. Oh, here's what I think you should do. It's, have you looked at it from this perspective? Have you considered there's something going on that's beyond what you've thought about so far, that it's not just about you being disadvantaged? Maybe there's something else going on. And there's a lot of power in a community for doing that, and especially in a men's community, because we are coming from a very similar perspective. If we all got we all have the men's perspective on this, we're going to be able to share and connect and either say something or not say something based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes we encourage guys to speak from their own experience, speak from the I place, as opposed to that advice, like you said, to be able to share, to be able to hear somebody else's experience around it, oftentimes shake something loose in us. And because we're holding that higher vision, we know that we as an individual are connected to this infinite intelligence, right? This brilliance, and we have this genius inside of us. And sometimes it helps to have an inspirational from somebody else to be able to access that piece of us within us, because ultimately what we're seeking to do is to take or to let go of the power that we put on others. Like, tell me what to do. Like you were talking about the priest or the God, the deity, tell me what to do, and instead go, yeah, what is it that I would do? Like, if I knew the answer to my question, which on some level we do, what is that? And to be open, again, be open, not resistant, be open. Like, oh, I can be my own authority in my life. I can say how much money I earn. It's not dependent on my job or my whatever, but this creative force that creates, like you said, that is the cosmos, that has created everything, that has created the multiverse and our universe and the galaxies and, our planet and all of that stuff that we are, and we have the access to that creativity within us to be able to then go, yes, what is it? What is the wisdom here for me? Like, I am deeply connected to this understanding, especially of myself, who would know me better than me, right? On some level, and consciously and unconsciously. And to be able to be open to that wisdom coming through can be the most powerful thing, and can be the most self-affirming thing. Like, oh yeah, we're taught, oh, the teacher knows, or the master knows, the person who's been doing it knows, the priest knows. And it's like, no. And that's one of the things that I love about our philosophy, is that it's like, it comes back to me. And I'm sure that's the thing that some people hate about our philosophy. Like, no, I just want to be told, I just want to follow the rules and get get what I need to get, but
yeah, I want to be able to go out and sin on Saturday night, get
absolution on Sunday,
absolution on Sunday morning, and lather, rinse, repeat. And for us, it doesn't work that way, because it's all about consciousness. What we're reaping is what we're sowing, and it's going to come back around, and it applies differently. And that said, there is huge power in having somebody else jump into our consciousness with us. Because when I'm doing prayer work for somebody else, they may be muddling along with some false belief about themselves, something they picked up from their childhood, something that an adult said casually that hooked their attention and got baked into their belief system, and it's been operative ever since. Well, I'm not carrying their baggage. I don't have their belief system. They come and they tell me that they want to have a wonderful, loving relationship. And it's like, okay, do you deserve a wonderful, loving relationship? And they stammer around for a little while, and eventually they say yes. And it's like, okay, we're going to do a prayer for that, because there's nothing standing in the way of that. This is an infinite, this universe is love itself. There's one power that shares itself as everything. That creativity is love. So that's all there is. So the thought that it can't exist for the person who I'm talking to, to me, it's preposterous. To them, they've got that lifelong experience, ever since middle school, of getting told no. So, that's the part that gets to go away. But I didn't have that experience. They did.
Yeah.
I did the prayer for them.
Yeah, that's for me, that was the thing in becoming a practitioner, and especially becoming a minister, to be able to recognize when I'm stuck in it. And that knowledge that simply picking up the phone and asking someone for, hey, can you hold the high vision for me? Hey, can you listen to me for a moment? Hey, can you support me in this? And to have somebody who's not engaged, like you said, in starting out, who's just like, it's just a parking spot. I'm just treated for a parking spot. It's no big deal. Like, I don't have an attachment to it. And to be able to have somebody who can hold that space for us, who doesn't have that attachment, who can be like, I can hold your high vision all day long and know that for you until you can know it for yourself. And it builds that awareness and that consciousness within us. It builds that even that faith of in this process, in this experience, like, oh yeah, this is an abundant universe, and I myself am the cause of that limitation. And when I can't see beyond that limitation, to be able to have that support that we need, practitioners or ministers or people in our lives that will just be able to see that greater good is available for us, that the answer is there for us, that the wisdom, that the abundance, that whatever it is we're seeking is there for us. Yeah. Oh, Bill, loving this conversation. So any closing thoughts, closing comments, wisdom to impart before we wrap things up here?
Just what I've been saying all along. Find your gift. Allow that infinite creative power that creates everything to create that gift even more richly and fully through you. That's what it is. And that, by the way, brings more good into the world. So it's not self-serving.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. I just want to do a little plug for you here. So, Bill is at New Thought Philly, so New Thought Philadelphia. So you can catch him at newthoughtphilly.org. And he's got that wonderful book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, and podcast on the New Thought Media network at ntnewthoughtmedia.org, ntmedia.org. So check them out. And thanks so much for being with us today. I just honor you in all that you do for our spiritual community, the many ways in which you're serving not only your community, but our community, this larger global community of New Thought. Thank you, brother. Great to talk to you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Be well.
I hope you enjoyed this interview from the New Thought Men's podcast. For instant access to all podcast interviews, talks from our summit, men's groups, and so much more, join us at newthoughtmens.community. Thanks so much for being with us today. There's more to come, so stay tuned in.